hit record and we'll get started.
Okay.
Cool. So this is the NWC Show. This is episode 24. We're joined with a man that needs no introduction, Sabu. Thanks for doing the show. Really, honestly, man, it's been a whirlwind. I've been fangirling out all day thinking about you're going to be on a show talking to me for somebody who's watched you for the majority of your career, which is weird.
Believe it or not, I'm pretty nervous too.
So the first thing we always ask people when they come on this show, and I would love to hear this from you as well, what got you into professional wrestling? What got you started?
Well, my uncle was the Sheik. He was a wrestler. So ever since I was about 3 years old, I've always wanted to pattern myself after him. So I started wrestling in 8th grade, amateur, and then wrestled amateur for 5 years. And then I trained for 2 years and had my first match when I was 21.
Cool. So I was quite similar. I wanted to get into wrestling, but here in Scotland, it was really no wrestling schools. So I went to an actual freestyle wrestling, and I got my ass kicked for a couple of weeks. And then the guy was like, "Oh, you want to go to professional wrestling?" So he sent me to a school up there, and it was because I seen somebody like yourself. So when I seen you, it was like 2005. I seen the barbed wire match between yourself and Abyss, and then I seen a DVD that had yourself and Terry Funk on it, and I was like, if this guy can do this crazy stuff, like jumping on the ropes and all this stuff, I was like, I can get into the business and stuff like that. And
I made it look easy, right?
Yeah, it was really slow when I started it. So kind of going along that line, obviously you started at 21 and stuff like that.
Well, when I started wrestling, I was 19 years old when I started pro wrestling training.
Right.
And my uncle he had a barn and a house. He made me go to the barn, bring the ring down into the backyard and set it up every day and tear it down every day for like 7 months, where I didn't get to wrestle in it, get to do nothing in it, just set it up and tear it down. And then after 7 months, he let me train in it. But when I first trained, it was with him, and he'd slap me around a little bit. He didn't wrestle me. He just kind of slapped me around. Mm-hmm. And I didn't fight back because out of respect, you don't do that.
Yeah, it was quite similar here when, like I said, there wasn't much wrestling schools. When I went, it was in like a garage, an industrial estate in the middle of nowhere, and they just made us run every day. Just like, okay, you need to go run 6-7 miles, which was before you even got in the ring, you had to do that.
Right. Well, see, I disagree with that. You do your conditioning on your own time. My uncle did the wrestling training when it was time for wrestling training. Conditioning was a different session. It was a different time, not the same.
Yeah, I think.
Plus, you don't want to be tired when you're working out.
Yeah, I think that's it. I would agree with you in that as well, but I think it was just to kind of scare those people away that maybe didn't want to be there and stuff like that.
The week after week. Yeah. Survival of the fittest.
And I was just the silly one that just stayed there just to kind of just run anyway, so it was pretty cool. But like I says, I've watched you for the entire amount of your career. I remember when I was younger going to America with my mum, and it was at the time when it was the ECW kind of comeback. I was so gutted I wasn't able to go. I remember just being I was a little boy and I was in a bad mood because I wasn't able to go see my favourite wrestler in Sabu. So how did you feel about that kind of ECW comeback? I know you had the matches with Big Show, Rey Mysterio and stuff like that. What's your kind of feeling about that?
That wasn't really a comeback. That was just a run in WWE. That was not ECW. That was a joke. It's try to say it was ECW. We had a bunch of guys in it like Test and Christian that had nothing to do with ECW. And so it was a joke. We never took it that serious. I thought it might be okay at first, but after I got there, I could see that it wasn't going to be any good.
Yeah, I think it's the same for myself when I was watching it. The first kind of couple of episodes felt okay, and then it just went like the WWE style.
When I got talked into it, they said they're going to keep Sabu the same, not talk and wrestle like I always wrestled, and not tone me down. So when I got there, the first few months was fine. It was ECW. Paul Heyman was still in the booking. But after 2 months or so, they took Paul Heyman out of the booking and everything went south for me.
Yeah, I kind of just turned off when they started bringing in like the zombie characters and stuff like that. I was like, I need to turn this off. It was
that was a joke. We had to do that because of the Sci-Fi Channel.
Oh, that explains it.
Vince didn't really want to do it, but they had to do it for the Sci-Fi Channel.
I think it's just such a
I think they even had aliens too.
Yeah, it was such a weird time because it was like you have like ECW, so knowing in wrestling is like this promotion that pushed the limits and done different stuff. People like Sabu,
Didn't have
Taz, all these different guys, and then it was just like, okay, here's a zombie. Like, what are we doing here?
Yeah, that kind of killed it for us.
And
people knew, when they did that, people knew we was not ECW.
Yeah, that's it. When I was like, because I remember all those kind of flashback DVDs showing you all the kind of cool stuff, and then when it was coming back, I was like, oh, this is going to be really cool. And then when they done that, I was like, this isn't the same at all. This is just WWE putting a different letters in front of their name.
It was WWE with 3 different letters.
Yeah. And obviously you were doing kind of TNA at that kind of same time with like Abyss, Samoa Joe, the lockdown matches and stuff like that. What did you think about your run there? Did you enjoy it? Was it just different?
What in TNA?
Yeah.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. They let me be myself. Pretty much. Jeff Jarrett, when he was booking it, he let me be exactly myself. Tables, chairs, blood, all that stuff. You know, I took for granted how much freedom they gave me. And then later on, I bitched about it, and then they took it away.
And how did you find that kind of?
I liked TNA. The first few years, it was good. It was fun.
And how did you find the kind of 6-sided ring? Was it different than normally being in 4, or were you kind of used to it from just traveling the world and being different kind of places?
Oh, I'm just used to it.
Yeah.
I've been on the road. I've been on the road for 35 years now.
And are you still kind of active at the minute, or are you kind of off because
no,
of injury
actually,
and stuff?
No, I hurt my back in May last year, but the coronavirus, kind of killed everything we were doing. But I hurt my back anyways. This happened to be the same time. So during this time, during the coronavirus, I'm trying to heal my back.
Yeah, I think good that it kind of lines up that the shows are kind of closed down, and then obviously not good that you're injured, but you can kind of rest up when everybody else is taking that kind of time off as well.
The virus was good for a couple months, then it got boring.
Yeah. It's the same here.
For a couple months.
Same here in Scotland. It was cool for the first kind of month or 2 when you got to just chill out and do nothing, but then now it's like it's almost a year. Can we get back out? So
that's it.
One thing I've always wanted to ask you is, who's your favourite wrestler of all time? What's your favourite wrestler of all time?
Well, I'd be cheating if I said the Sheik or Rob Van Dam. So aside from them, I would say Jimmy Snuka was. Tiger Mask was my favorite. Jushin Liger was. Oh, they all 3 were my favorite. Jushin Liger, Tiger Mask, Jimmy Snuka. They were my favorite.
It's always such a hard question because when you say somebody, a bunch of other people come to your brain.
Right, it's hard to just single one guy out.
Yeah, and obviously you're kind of injured at the minute and stuff like that. Do you plan on coming back, maybe having a retirement match or?
Yeah, if my back gets better, I got to have surgery on my back. I'm not sure exactly what we got to do to it, but when the pain in my back goes away, then I'll be. See, I could wrestle now, just I wouldn't wrestle very good, and I take pride, and I still have passion for what I do. So I don't want to go out there and give a half-assed effort or a bad effort or a bad performance when I know it's going to be bad. If I didn't know it's going to be bad and it happens, but I know it'll be bad.
Yeah,
so I can't do it yet.
Yeah,
but I will eventually.
And do you keep up with the modern product, or are you kind of just there?
No. I watch. I don't get involved in promos. When promos come out, I switch the channel. But I watch AEW and I watch NXT and Raw.
Yeah, and
I watch a little bit of ROH.
Yeah, what do you think about today's product? You think it's really good, or do you think it's just?
It's not that it's not any good. It's that there's too many guys with the gift of athletics. Too many guys with the gift of gymnasts. Everybody's a gymnast now. Even the big fat guys are gymnasts. And what junior heavyweights did. That's what I do. I wrestle like a junior heavyweight. Scott Norton wrestles like a power heavyweight. So he don't do what I do. I don't do what he does. That's a good combination, a good clash. But if I wrestle a guy that does the same thing I do, we're just trying to one-up each other. And I don't like matches like that. And that's what I always see. That's what I always see. That's what I see now is they're trying to one-up each other. Dive a little higher, or jump a little farther. Where it doesn't have to make, where it don't make sense in the match.
Yeah, I always say the same thing.
What's that?
I say the exact same thing. Like, sometimes it just doesn't really make much sense. And like back in the day, you would get...
They're getting in a dive to get in a dive. Instead of getting in a dive to knock the guy out so he gets counted out so you can win the match that way. Because you can win the match if you knock the guy out. That's my strategy for diving on the guy. I dive on him to knock him out so I can climb back in the ring and win by count out.
Yeah, I think for me, when I've been watching wrestling for most of my life, so I'm turning 30 this year, I've been watching it since I was like 5, so 25 years, and I feel like it's lost that kind of like purpose to it. Like when, for instance, I've been watching quite a lot of your stuff recently, is you see what you're doing, you can kind of get the purpose of what you're doing, but nowadays it just seems if you just do like a flip or a dive for the sake of it, and it ruins the product. Like you said, you don't expect to see Randy Savage, Hulk Hogan, John Cena do like the stuff that you do. But
yeah, exactly.
they're not there
If they
to do
did
that.
what I did, then they don't need me. But see, those guys didn't do that, so they needed me.
Yeah, I think that's what wrestling's lost a little bit as well. And where do you like? Obviously, there's a few different kind of, you get people saying that they dislike different parts of kind of wrestling. What's something that you don't like about wrestling? Before we move into the positive stuff, what's something that you don't like about wrestling in general?
Too much dialogue, too much talking, too much in-depth storyline, too much bullshit. Sometimes wrestling could be its own storyline. Just me wanting to wrestle you, that's a storyline in itself. It doesn't have to be, some stupid doctor or fuck my wife or something. That's crazy. Not everything has to be an angle.
I couldn't agree more. Like, no, I remember the old ECW days, going back and watching that. Sometimes I was like I didn't know the story. I wasn't catching up what was happening. It just felt like two guys against each other, and it was a good match. But now,
see, ECW towards the end was getting too in depth too much dialogue with the Dreamer and the Raven stuff. I didn't like it, but it was none of my business either. If you notice my matches, they were pretty much action. I didn't do promos.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why I always hold you up there. It's like one of my favourite guys to watch, is because you've not got a bunch of dialogue, like you says. You've got like, oh, this person's a dentist or a doctor, and you're like,
I try to be a wrestler like I'd want to watch, or my mother would watch. Me and my mother were watching wrestling when I was 10, 15 years old, and everybody yelled and screamed pretty much the same, all like Ric Flair. And she goes, "Promise me you'll never do that." I said, "Mom, I'll never talk." So part of it was a promise. The other part is I wouldn't want to talk because that would be a wrestler I wouldn't like.
yeah.
If I talked, I'd be a wrestler I wouldn't like.
Yeah, I totally get it. I think as well, like you say, there's too many. It feels like it went back to that early 1990s period of wrestling when there's just everybody's got a character. But
yeah, everybody. Nobody is just a first match guy. Everybody's got a gimmick.
Yeah, like
not everybody has a gimmick.
It doesn't matter if they're just like a jobber or something. Everybody has to have like and it's always a silly gimmick. Like they try and put people over, and you're just like,
Hey, but when I was talking to this guy about training, he goes, "I'm getting good on my promos. They're gonna let me in the ring pretty soon." I go, "What? Promos? You first learn how you do it in the ring, and if you're any good, then you learn promos. If you don't learn, if you're not any good in the ring, then you don't learn promos."
Yeah, I think like you just said, it pretty much sounds like I've got it backwards. Like when I was started training, I didn't learn anything about promos until even after I had my first match. Like they didn't need me to speak; they just needed me to go out there, be a body, and get hit off or something.
Yeah. Wrestling is the meat of it. If you can wrestle, you got the meat of it, and the icing on it would be the promo. Well, I didn't have that icing. Van Damme gave me that icing, and Fonzie did, and Super Genie. But I didn't have that icing, and you got to have it. To be a successful wrestler, you got to have the promo part. I just don't have it, and nor would I want the guy I want my favorite wrestler to have it. I want my favorite wrestler not say a word. Yeah,
I think that's what added to the mystique of Sabu back in the day as well. You were in the ring, you didn't do any of the kind of talking stuff. Everybody you knew when you were coming out to the ring, it was just going to be a good match. Like there was no need to have all this.
And most of our matches were called on the fly. Years ago, a good wrestler was judged on how good he reacted on his feet, how good he went by ear, not how good he remembered the script. Like today's wrestling is too much script, too much choreograph, too much dialogue, too much promos.
And do you think wrestling will ever get back to that point, or do you think it needs to hit that?
There'll be like something like All Japan was still there.
Yeah.
And New Japan is a little bit more crazy than All Japan, but All Japan still had that normal traditional style.
I think it's like wrestling has been declining for the past 5-6 years, like on TV shows and stuff like that. It will eventually get to the point when we need to do something different. Hopefully, they go back to doing like the way it was before. Like I feel they've just took the wrong street somewhere and went somewhere totally different.
When they did that explosion match, they took the wrong street on that. Yeah. At first I said this is going to be sweet. Then when it went bad, I was glad. I thought it would be so sweet. I was jealous because these guys got the money, and They have the playground, and they can do anything they want, and they chose to do shit.
I don't, when I seen it for the show, so I was reviewing it. I stayed up because I finished work and I had to stay up later that day. And then it was like at the ending, I was just like, oh, why did you do? Like, there's so many stuff that you could copy.
And the one guy covered up the other guy.
Yeah. And there's so many people that are like, oh, it's great storytelling, and it's like, but it was sparklers, like,
right.
There's no really storytelling if it doesn't look good. So on the flip side of that, what's something that you love about wrestling, even today's product, or what's something that you really enjoy about the wrestling world?
I like WrestleMania. Not that I like WrestleMania, but I like it how they make it like a Super Bowl, and actually bigger than the Super Bowl. So I kind of like that. Before I didn't like the progress of WWE, but now since they've done it, what the hell? I gave in. Hey, Rob Van Dam is getting into the Hall of Fame this year, I think.
Oh, is he? I see. I think that'll be.
I wasn't supposed to say nothing, but you can tell people that.
An exclusive.
Exclusive, right?
No, I was the same when I was younger. I was more like that teenage kind of time in your life when you just want to rebel against everything. I was so used to watching WWE, WCW. Then when I became a teenager, that was after WCW left. I was like, I don't like WWE, and I only watched TNA, ECW. But then I had to get in eventually when the network came back and stuff like that. I was like, there's so much I can watch. There's no need to. You need to just kind of give into it. You can't. It's a machine. It's like Disney for wrestling, really.
Right, it's a machine.
And do you ever see yourself kind of going back there? Would you ever go in the Hall of Fame? Like,
I talk bad about the Hall of Fame because I think it's a fake Hall of Fame, but I would do it because it'd be a good payoff. So I'd do it for the payoff. But I might motherfucker him when I do a speech. If I did a speech, I might motherfucker him. I might.
They'd probably get you to stay in character and just not say anything. Like, just go up and collect the award and leave because you've been saying that.
Right. Yeah, I think the WWE Hall of Fame is the fakest Hall of Fame there is. I mean, they don't honor wrestlers. They just try to who can sell tickets. Tickets to the next thing.
And I think as well, the Hall of Fame, it's a cool night for obviously people going in and stuff like that. But sometimes it's so long to watch. Like if you're a fan or if you go to it, it can be like 4 or 5 hours of just people like walking around and stuff, which can be really boring.
Yeah, I bet.
So, what would you say? Another question we like to ask is, what would you say is your favourite event of all time? Like, it could be one you took part in, or just one you like to watch.
I don't know. I liked all my big matches in Japan. There was one where it was me and Chono versus Strong Machine and Hirata. No, that's his Hirata. Fujinami and Hirata. And that was like 67,000 people. That was one of my favorites.
Yeah. And kind of looking back at your career, is Japan the time that you hold as like really dear to yourself?
I got my big break in Japan. Before that, I was just still making $100 a match. And then 7 years into it, I went to Japan and I started making a living. When I started making a living, I went to Japan. I went to Japan, I started making a living.
And would you say that you preferred your time in Japan to ECW and stuff like that, or is it just kind of the same?
No, I brought Japan to ECW. Well, when I came in the ECW, they didn't know what a hardcore style was or extreme. There was no extreme or hardcore then. I just was coming in for a match and to go in and leave. That's it, not come back. It was just another day. And but I got over, and it looked like we had a plan of being extreme, but it wasn't. It was Eastern Championship Wrestling with me there, and then eventually they had to upgrade it, and extreme was the way to go. It was a perfect name for it.
Yeah, and after you kind of came in, that's when people like Benoit, Guerrero, Malenko and stuff all kind of started to come from Japan to America.
Yeah, they came in at my recommendation, especially Benoit. I brought him in myself. I didn't bring him to break my neck. I brought him in.
That's what I was going to say.
Too far.
the famous moment when it flips you over, you break your neck. I always remember seeing it on one of those DVDs when they slow it down and they draw the little arrow and stuff like that. And I was like, there was no need to rub it in.
My chin collapsed into my chest. It was terrible. Yeah, I still get a little cringy when I see it.
Yeah, that was one of the reasons I stopped wrestling, was I broke my neck and I decided to stop because I didn't want to cause any further injury to it, because it was just agonising pain at that for like a year or two, and I still get some niggles and stuff just now, but I was like, I need to stop, I can't keep doing this.
Yeah, I sewed that neck thing for about 15 years. About 5, 6 years ago, it stopped hurting so much. Now it don't bother me. But I sold it for like 15 years. It was a bitch.
just keeping it going, keeping the
Keep
character
moving.
alive. But I
Yeah.
remember
Well, when I took the bump, I didn't have no bookings for 2 weeks, so I took 2 weeks off. But then I had to go to Japan for 5 weeks, and I went to Japan for 5 weeks and wrestled for FMW for 5 weeks, and then 2 days for New Japan. I jumped the same week, the same tour.
after I'd done my neck, I didn't realise that I actually broke it. I got it back up, and I was like, oh, my neck's very sore. I put some ice on it, and I waited maybe like 4 or 5 weeks before I went to the doctors. And then when I went, they were like, oh, like we need to take you aside, like you've really broke your neck, like yeah. And I was like, how does? Because I thought the minute you broke your neck, that was you couldn't walk or anything. And they were like, oh no, there's loads of different ways you can do it. So I learned something new that day.
Well, mine wasn't like this. Mine was a compression fracture, so everything stayed in place. So it was just painful. But if I was to hit sideways, it could have done that. And that was the threat by the doctor. If I get hit sideways, it'd be the end of me. But I wasn't. It didn't bother me.
Yeah, and at that kind of time in ECW, obviously, the few matches I've been going back and watching recently again, just to kind of catch up on your kind of style and stuff. You had quite a bit of a feud with Sandman. What was that kind of like for you? Was it good, or did you just know? Because the styles were so different. Like you had like a more flashy style.
It was fun because he was drunk, so I was laughing through the match. You know, I'll say do something, and he'll do something else. I go, "What are you doing?" You know, and that made me crack up. And wrestling him was funny but dangerous because he's drunk. You know, people said he wrestled better drunk. No, it's that he wrestled drunk and he wrestled badly. That was the excuse for it, that he was drunk. If he wasn't drunk, he'd still be wrestling badly.
I always remember when like you would see the guys from ECW go to WCW and then they would come back. So like Ravens, Sandman, and they came back and they were just like jacked. Like Sandman had abs and stuff like that when they came back, and I was like, that's so weird. Like,
yeah, he was doing the juice.
Yeah, and for yourself, on this show I'd normally do like a watch along for early WCW, and I didn't realise you were in WCW in '95. I think it was '95, and it was against I can't remember, Mr. JL. I think it was. Yeah. And what was your time like in early WCW? Was it?
No, it wasn't as fun as it looked. The Kevin Sullivan said, "How much would it cost to do the first Nitro?" And I said, "I'm booked. I can't do it." He goes, "How much it cost to do the second Nitro?" I said, "You don't have to give me anything. Just put me over." And he goes, "We have to give you something." I said, "Okay, give me 500, then we'll talk." So I came in, wrestled, got over. They gave me 500. And they said, "You got a job. Here's a contract." And I go, "Well, yeah, but there's no money here." They go, "Well, you'll pencil in the money later. It's what you wanted." I go, "What did I want?" They go, 500 a match. And they said one pay-per-view a month and one Monday a month. So I'd only be wrestling twice, which sounds good, but not for 500 a match. I'd be making $1,000 a month, which is ridiculous. And they didn't want to negotiate, did not negotiate. So I kind of walked out.
Yeah, that's
when I did the lights out, lights on first time in ECW.
That sounds insane to think how much money WCW was throwing at that time.
They did not want to budge. They wouldn't budge. I'm not talking they, I'm talking Eric Bischoff. He wouldn't budge.
Yeah, I think it's insane to think as well. Like they had so much money they were spending, and then they were just giving somebody like you that would bring so much eyes, or just $500.
Well, they end up going out of business a year later, so they could at least give me $1 million or 500,000 at least. You know, is what it was Kevin and JJ Dillon had a secret meeting in Atlanta with me. So they gave me this contract. It was for $500,000 1 year, $1 million the next year, $1 million the third year, and so. I was shitting my pants, so I said, "I got to take this to my hotel and read it." And Kevin goes, "Read it, just sign it." I go, "No, I got to read it." But I wanted to tell my mother. But before I could tell my mother, when I called her, she had a heart attack on the phone because my dogs someone came to the door at the same time I called. My dogs were going crazy, and she couldn't control them. And she had a heart attack before I could tell her. So I had my brother go over there and help her. My brother lived down the street, and then I flew home in 6 hours. I was in ICU with her, and I called Kevin Sullivan. I said, I can fax over the contract now. I'm going to sign it. And he said, "Too late. We're already being sued." So I lost, $500,000 in a matter of 6 hours.
That's
actually $2.5 million.
That's an insane story. Like it must have hurt how loss and just thinking like the different stuff that could have happened. But lucky, they kind of got out of business a year later, so it was.
Yeah, that was when they were using ICP and Vampiro.
Yeah,
I would have been way better than those guys.
And
yeah, I lost it in that little bit of time.
Yeah, I think that would be. If it was me, I'd have probably started crying. To be honest with you, that amount of money. So,
I pretty
obviously,
much did. But I was happy my mother was better.
Yeah.
I didn't really think about losing the contract right away.
Yeah.
I said, oh, well, fuck it.
And one of the most famous stories is about you and Rob Van Dam. You got caught with smoking weed and you got released from WWE. Is that true, or is that just one of those like rumors?
No. I got released because I didn't want to do what they wanted me to do. They wanted me to do something. They said I wrestled Kevin Thorne, and I said my neck's hurt, and they said, well, you wrestled with pain before. I said I'm not wrestling with pain anymore, and they said, okay, you can leave. So I left. It wasn't nothing to do with the marijuana. I got a $1,000 fine for the marijuana thing, and Rob got a 30-day suspension, but that was it. And he lost the belt. He lost the title.
Yeah, I remember that period when I was like, why is he losing this belt? Like, it doesn't make any sense because
of the weed thing.
Yeah, and at that time you kind of done the stuff with John Cena and stuff like that. Did you enjoy that, or was it just?
Yeah, he's all right. He was more gracious than I thought he'd be, and he knew my history as much as I knew it. His first live match was in Worcester, Massachusetts. His dad took him to his first match when I broke my jaw. He said he was traumatized.
Well, it must be a cool experience to have like somebody like John Cena look up to you, well, be traumatized by you. What would be kind of cool experience?
Yeah, no, he was good. He was better than everybody going into the match. A few guys were saying, "No, he's a crowbar, and you got heavy hands, and he sucks." And it was just the opposite. He was not a crowbar. He was good.
And obviously, one of the most famous things I think has ever happened in your career is, well, there's so many of the injuries and stuff like that, is the bicep injury during the barbed wire match. I remember I've listened to numerous amounts of interviews about it, but I remember watching the match, seeing the like you're just like holding your arm, starting to get the tape. The finish for that match, was that meant to go over like that way, or was it Terry Funk was meant to win?
That was an accident. We had a bit of a plan. Like me and Terry never had much of a plan. There's a few things on the finish, and once I did that, the plan was out. Everything we had planned or thought we had planned was out the window. I was just trying to survive. And when I was taping my arm, it was to keep my bicep from rolling up in my shoulder and keep me from bleeding to death because I was getting lightheaded. Like at one point, I did stand up fast and I fell back down. And it looked like he punched me, but he didn't punch me. I just went back down. But anyways, I was trying to survive. After I stopped the bleeding, then it was okay. But it took a little while to do that.
Yeah, I think I remember seeing that as a kid, and I just remember like the blood coming out and stuff, and I was just like, "This guy's insane! Like he must be like, how could he not win?" And I was like, so he kind of traumatized me at that point as well.
Yeah, it was too early in the match. I couldn't go home. I had to finish
it. Yeah, I think that's insane as well. If you think about at that point, it was always about finishing the match stuff, and then now, like if somebody was to do that, like.
They would have stopped the match.
Yeah, the show would have been called off or something like something.
Yeah.
And I know you've obviously got places to go and you've got your therapy and stuff like that. So what I'll do is I'll keep this short. This is the last kind of question we always ask. And I'll give you my example for it. It's always a one that's a brain teaser for everybody. So I hope you don't mind me asking. Mine says, the question is, if you could replace anybody in any match at any point in history, who would it be? For me, it would be I would replace Owen Hart against Bret Hart in SummerSlam '94 in that blue cage, just because I love that match. And people will probably say I should have picked one for you, but I didn't want to do that. I wanted to do the one that I always pick. So what would you do?
Hogan and The Rock. I'd like to be in that match. They wrestled. I've seen them wrestle live. I think it was a pay-per-view. But anyways, they have an awesome match and an awesome history.
Who would you replace in that match, or would you just add yourself in as the fifth man?
I'd replace Hogan. I think The Rock is excellent. He does everything he does. He does it very well. He don't do nothing that flamboyant, but what he does well, and that's why he's the best. He only does things that he's good at. He don't do things he's not good at.
Yeah, and it would be criminal for my family if I didn't say this to you. So when I was growing up, because you started mentioning Ric Flair, talking about your mum, and when I was growing up, I used to watch wrestling with my gran. She hated Ric Flair with a passion, and I don't know why. she literally just like, there was one time a DVD came out. I was like, could you go get it for me? And she was like, no, because it's got a picture of Ric Flair on it. She would refuse to go. She went to a show with me. She left when he came out and stuff like that. But my gran unfortunately passed away last year. One of our favourite wrestlers were yourself. She loved everything you done. She used to think you were insane, but she loved everything you done. So I wouldn't be able to live with myself.
That sounds great. Thank you.
Man, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to end the recording. If you wait there, and I'll tell you when this will go up and stuff like that. Everybody knows who Sabu is. You don't need to get where people find you. I've got your Twitter in the links below. I've got Jeannie's GoFundMe. I've got that in the links below as well for our medical bills. Is there anything else you want to say just for a...
order my book at ecwsabu.com. You can order my book, and I got a coloring book too, bedtime story coloring book.
Yeah, I've been looking at that for my kids as well, the colouring book, and I've got your book link in the description below. So if you just wait there, I'll end the recording and I'll tell you what's going to happen next.
Right on.